So we're going to be writing our own urban legend, and there's lots of ways that you could approach that. So let's start with just a few more examples. Just like Max had said, I think the most widely known urban legends are Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster. Which, the reason why I would say that they are much more of an urban legend is there's never been really any substantiated truth. There's some pretty clear proof that pictures like these were faked, and that they're not real. And so the idea of there could be something lurking in the bottom of the lake, or there could be something way in the mountains that like people haven't run into, like that makes sense. But at the same time, these really are, and I'm not going to get into a debate about it, but yeah, that's what we're thinking about with urban legends. That there's these kind of rumors in story form. Yeah. Hold on. Yeah, exactly. But do you see how there's no like real conclusive proof on shows like that? Yeah. So, but that doesn't matter. We're not here to argue the feasibility of stories like that. We are thinking about the creative writing connection. Yeah, still. Yeah, and there's the urban legend there kind of shows that probably was faked. That's one thing that we have to be aware of in our society is pictures can easily be altered. Okay, but hold on. Let's think about the project itself. So you are going to start out with a brainstorm because it makes writing the story a lot easier. You have some options. Yeah. Interesting. I hadn't heard that before. Well, and that's what makes it an urban legend, right? We're not totally sure if it's true or not. It's a rumor in story form. But I like that perspective of, like, you could tell a story like that, where you're telling the background of the story, right? Like what Jake said literally could be the project of the story of the guy who pranked the whole world, right? Or you could take a story that already exists and it's almost like a fractured fairy tale, but with an urban legend, right? Like you could take an urban legend and do something new and different with it. You could also tell the background. You could tell part two. You can make one up that does not exist at all. So let's think about a couple of quick things here. What makes it an urban legend and not another kind of short story? Because again, this really is just, it's almost like Free Write Friday, but almost it's kind of more focused than a normal Free Write Friday. So here's what makes it an urban legend. Number one, it is a narrative. It's a story. Number two, the veracity, which is a really fancy way of saying truth, is questionable. There's parts of the story where people are like, I don't know. But people tell the story as though it is true because the way you tell it should be plausible enough or realistic enough to think, okay, maybe it is true. Usually you'll have different versions of the same story. Like, think Bigfoot sometimes also is referred to as the abominable snowman or the Yeti, because sometimes it varies depending on where in the world that urban legend existed or who's telling who, right? So sometimes you'll get different versions. Sometimes urban legends are a cautionary tale. Like, when you go into your basement, the 31st at midnight on Halloween, be aware that it could be transporting into a portal for blah, 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 right? Sometimes they're a cautionary tale. Sometimes urban legends are straight up told as a joke. Sometimes urban legends look like a news article, that they are reported as though they are newsworthy, even though they might not be. So there's a lot of second-hand kind of information in an urban legend. Anytime you hear somebody say something like, well, my brother's sister's hairdresser's husband said, those are a good kind of like indicator. Okay, this might be an urban legend. Yeah, Steele. Sorry, I know. I didn't let you say it as soon as your hand went up. If you remember, let me know. Jake. Mm-hmm. So I like, again, like your unique kind of perspective of we take some sort of rumor like that, and we could make it into a full-blown story that's more of a joke form. Urban legends are often scary. In first semester, I always do this project right around Halloween. So, but yours doesn't have to be. Yours could be more of a jokey one still. Yeah, that's an urban legend, right? And I think a lot of us grew up on ones like that. Like, my sisters loved to terrify me with Bloody Mary. I could not handle it. And even to this day as an adult, like, but I'm a self-proclaimed wimp. But yeah, sometimes, even though logically we know better, right, it still feels like a little freaky. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right, right. But for the purposes of this project, you could treat it as though it is an urban legend. Yeah. So, hold on, sorry, I gotta keep going just for the sake of time. So, the first thing you're gonna have to think about is the why. Some urban legends exist to explain something weird. I legitimately, this was an 8th grader like 4 years ago. His urban legend was a ridiculous one. His was to explain why you have belly button lint. And it was totally ridiculous and totally made up and extremely entertaining. So don't think that just because lots of urban legends often are creepy, don't think that means that yours has to be. But for lots of them do kind of take that creepy route. For example, the street that I grew up on by Liberty Park, there was this one house that everybody on my street was terrified of that house. That there was one girl who kind of spread the rumor, the urban legend, that she walked past that house one time and she saw something creepy in the window. And for the rest of like my childhood, every time I passed that house, I would run right full on because I was so freaked out, even though it's not real and it was totally an urban legend. But if you grew up in a place where you've got that kind of story that kind of gets passed along, I don't know if any of you have experienced this, but there was a kid a couple years ago who said that most Albion kids know of this one place that's like over by the freeway, that there's like a tunnel that kids will like slide down and it like brings you into this weird like industrial park place. I don't know, right? So I think most neighborhoods have those kinds of rumors that if you want to make yours based on a real rumor that kind of gets passed around. But again, think of the why. Is it like something that is going to be more ridiculous? Is it an unexplained mystery? But think of the reason behind it. You can also make yours Albion-based. This lady doesn't exist anymore, but I bet you if you have an older sibling that used to go to Albion, everybody knew Miss Parker. Miss Parker was this really adorable, I think it was, she was this tiny old lady, but it was like totally like tough. She was the hall monitor for like a billion years at Albion. And all the kids loved her and feared her. But she believed in ghosts, and she was convinced that one time she was here late for like a later performance, and she was convinced she saw a ghost, which she doesn't, it's not real, guys. But if you want to make yours based at Albion like that, you totally could. It doesn't have to be. Okay, again, the where is really going to matter. Yours does not have to be based in America. There's urban legends all around the world, right? So if you want to do a cool one that's like the urban legend of Australia, or an urban legend based in Africa, you totally could do something cool like that. The perspective here could really change based on the where. It could also be something where, like, maybe it's deep in the jungles of the Amazon, or something silly. Like, this is the urban legend of the restroom of Chuck E. Cheese, right? There's so many different ways to approach this. Then the when also could matter. If you want your when to just be present day, 2024, that's totally fine, but you can also have fun with it. Like, what if it's back in the time of cavemen and woolly mammoths and all that kind of cool stuff? Or what if yours is back in, like, Shakespearean England, right? The when can really change the story. So a good story has to have a conflict. You don't have stories without conflict. So on this one, I want you to be thinking, what's the major thing that's driving the story forward? Is it a monster attacking people? Is it people dealing with a rumor? Is it people dealing with some sort of magic? What's the big problem? Is there an unexplained phenomenon? And be thinking of not only your main conflict, but I would recommend you should also be thinking of minor conflict as well, because having a major and a minor conflict really helps drive your story forward, okay? So then I also want you to plan out your main character. Maybe the main character is you, the person experiencing the legend. Maybe it's someone totally different. You could use someone real. Like if you want to put like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has some sort of urban legend he's dealing with, you can really approach it however you want. But who's your protagonist and antagonist? Who's your main character? Who's getting in their way? If you have supporting characters, great. You don't have to. Your urban legend might just be focused on one person the whole time. That's totally fine. And then I do want you to think about your plot a little bit, because it will just make writing your story tomorrow so much easier. So think about exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution. Think about how, like, what the path the story is actually going to take. And then I am going to have everybody do a little bit of art on this project. So I'm going to have you plan out your art before you even write your story. I've had some really cool art before. I had a kid one year who his urban legend was based on some real Native American myths, and he turned the myth into an urban legend, and then he created a really cool totem pole, and that was the art that he created. I had a kid, I want to say 3 years ago now. His urban legend was a typical, like, monster-based urban legend, and his art that he created, I should have taken a picture. I'm, like, kicking myself that I didn't. But he used, like, he basically took a mask and, like, painted the mask to look like the monster in his urban legend. It was so above and beyond what I was expecting. Most people will just do a sketch or a drawing. That's totally fine. But I want you to think about the art that you're going to do, because the writing and the art are both part of your grade on this project. So tomorrow we'll start with the writing, and then on Wednesday you'll do your art. But that being said, the last big warning I want to give before I set you loose. So you might be really, really brave, like my husband. My husband loves being terrified. He has never found a movie that has actually scared him as much as he wants to be scared, which is the complete opposite of me. I cannot even listen to scary movies. Like, I can't even be in the same room, because I'm just, like, the music itself freaks me out so much. So you're surrounded by, like 31 other kids in our classroom. And you might be surrounded by a bunch of really brave, the opposite of me kids, but you also, like, there might be a kid sitting behind you who you go and Google urban legend ideas and you just, like, terrify them. I'm not trying to scar anyone for life. Like, I really do mean that. I don't want anyone leaving today, like, absolutely freaked out. I was the kind of teenager who, when I saw something scary, it took me like a month to get over it. So, for real, will you be aware of that? If you are allowed to Google ideas, but if you are going to Google urban legend ideas, be aware most of them are extremely creepy. And so you should not look if you don't think you could personally handle that. And even if you are going to look, I want you to really do your best to block your screen so that people sitting behind you aren't leaving being terrified today. Okay, so questions before I officially have you start working.